Hi, it's Kirsty from Lloyd's Sewing, and let's take a closer look at the Brother A16 sewing machine. The Brother A16 machine is one of our most popular models within the Brother range, and that's because at its price point it's got a lot of high-end features. This machine has a start-stop button, and this means you have the option to use a foot controller or use the start-stop instead. We've then got a button above that to do an automatic reverse stitch. You have a lock stitch button, a button to take the needle up and down. There's a speed control on a slider, which is very easy to use, and it means you've got a lot of control over your stitch speed. And this works in conjunction with the foot controller. So if you have this on the slower speed and put your foot all the way down on the foot pedal, it will still only go really slowly, so you can have a lot of control over your stitches there. Perfect if you're working with finer fabrics or an important delicate project. Over on the screen here, you have a jog dial to turn and select the stitch that you would like to do. This machine has 16 stitches on it in total, most of them utility stitches, but we do have a couple of decorative stitches here with the blanket stitch and the herringbone stitch. You've got your basic straight stitch, and just to focus on a few others, you've also got an overcasting stitch, blind hemming stitch, and a triple stitch, which allows you to work, when you're going through lots of thick layers of fabric, denim, anything like that. It's an extra strong stitch, and we've got 3 different styles of one-step buttonholes. The stitch that you've selected will show in the opening on the panel here, and there is a letter which tells you which foot you need to use, and each of the feet that come with the machine have a letter engraved on them, so you know which one you should be using for that stitch. And at the top here, we have buttons to alter our stitch length and buttons to alter our stitch width according to how you want the stitch to look. And if we press this button, it will show up on the screen that we have got the automatic reverse turned on. So that will do a little reverse stitch at the beginning and the end of our sewing. We also, coming back down to this area of the machine, have an extended J-foot or a longer J-foot, which is the standard foot, and we have longer feed dogs as well, and it's also got an advanced square feed drive system. What that means is that the feed dogs work in a square motion, so they will come along the bottom, up and across the top and back down again, all at once. So you have a much better coverage of the feed dogs on your fabric, and it feeds the fabric through a lot better, especially if you're going over bulky layers and seams and going from 3 layers of fabric back down to 1. It goes through very smoothly. The feet all attach on in a very easy way. I'll just turn this round so you can see. There's a quick release button here on the back of the presser foot holder, and all you do is match up the bar on the foot with the gap on the presser foot holder and press the button to attach and release them. We can also drop the feed dogs down on this machine if you would like to do free motion, and that is done very easily with this button here. And we can put the feed dogs down and then back up again. And the last thing I'd like to show you is we have an accessory box on the front here, storage for all the bits and pieces that come with the machine. And then this comes off to reveal a long free arm that comes all the way down to here. And this is perfect if you are sewing, sleeves, cuffs, trouser hems, anything like that, because you've got the full free arm all the way around the machine, and it allows you to put the tube over and sew around it. The fantastic thing about this machine is that it's got an automatic needle threader. So before we thread, we need to make sure that the foot is in the up position. So you've got your presser foot lever on the inside here, so make sure that that's up, and that ensures that the tension discs at the top here are open for the thread to travel through. And the other thing we need to make sure is that the take-up lever is in the highest position inside here. And to do that, the needle needs to be in the highest position. So to check that the needle's in the highest position, you press the needle up and down button, it will go down, press it to lift it back up again, and now we know that the needle's in the highest position.
I think, Kirsty, when the machine stops automatically, it stops in the threading position if the needle is up, is that right?
It does, yes, it will stop at the top. So let's take a look at how we're going to thread this machine. So we've got 2 lines to follow here. The dotted line is for winding the bobbin, so we'll come back to that later on. And I'm going to follow the solid line for threading the needle of the machine. So I'm going to go underneath the catch at number 1, around the back at number 2, straight down, underneath at number 3, around the take-up lever at number 4, from right to left, straight down through number 5, behind the catch here, which is the thread guide, at number 6, and sometimes you just need to hold the thread at the top and put a bit of tension on it to be able to pull that thread right into number 6 here. And then we're going to capture it into the needle threader, so you go between the gap, click it into number 7, and you'll feel it clicking and hear it clicking. Cut it off at number 8, which is the cutter on the side here. And now we're going to pop the foot down, so we've got a little bit more clearance here for the needle threader to come down and round, and it also puts tension on that top thread as we're threading it. Bring the lever on the side here all the way down until it's reached its limit and the needle threader has come round at the bottom, and then release, and it just pulls a little loop of thread through the eye of the needle, and then that's our needle threaded. Let's look at how to wind a bobbin for this machine. So we're going to be following the dotted line now to wind the bobbin, and this is our bobbin winder here on the right hand side. I have one of my brother bobbins. The machine comes with a few of these, and it's got a little catch in it here, a little notch, and what we're going to do is pop that on the bobbin winder and then spin it round until that notch matches up with that spring. Okay, I'll come back to my top thread, and I'm still going to go underneath the catch at number 1 like I did when I was threading the needle, but we're following the dotted line, so we come around the back at number 2, and now we're going to come across, and now we're going to wrap the thread around the tension disc for the bobbin winder here, and it's going to come back on itself, so the thread is going to come around here and underneath that little tension disc there. Bring it across to the bobbin, and from the back wind it round a few times, usually about 6 or 7 times, and then bring this tail end of the thread between the gap here. Pull the thread, and it cuts that tail end off. There's a little blade inside there. And then we're going to pull the bobbin winder across, and then on the front of the machine I'm going to press the start button, and the bobbin will start winding. I can adjust the speed, I can bring that up so it'll wind faster. And remember, if you're not using the start stop button, you would just use your foot controller instead. So once we've got enough thread on our bobbin, I press the stop button, bring the bobbin winder back across to deactivate it, pull the bobbin off the bobbin winder, and then I like to just use these little blades inside here to cut my thread as well, and I can just snip that thread off there. So now we need to put this bobbin in the machine. So we come down to our needle plate area here, Now it's a top load bobbin, which means that it's very easy to load into the machine, but it also means that it's easy to see when the thread's running out. So there's no sewing and then the thread runs out and you've not been able to see that your bobbin's empty. So bring this button across here and the needle plate cover or the bobbin cover will release. And the thread needs to go in anti-clockwise, so with the thread coming off from the back to the left. The machine does have stickers on it here which shows you how to thread the bobbin, how to thread the top of the machine. There's loads of instructions with it, and it also comes with a manual as well that shows you all this information. So all we do is drop the bobbin inside the bobbin case and then follow the arrows round. And as we come around this point, you would feel the tension on the thread and that it's gone through the tension disc in the bobbin case. Carry on pulling the thread around. Pull and it will cut in there. There's a little blade inside there. And then all we do is pop our needle plate cover back on and clip that in place. The Brother A16 comes with a good range of accessories needed to use the machine. So on the machine itself, when you unbox it, it will have the J foot, which is the standard zigzag foot on the machine. There will be an empty bobbin inside, and then the machine in its little accessory pouch will have an additional 3 empty bobbins there. You get a seam ripper or a stitch unpicker. You get a range of feet suitable to do all the stitches on the machine. So the I foot is for blind hemming, the G foot is for overcasting, the A foot is for your buttonholes, the M foot's for button attachment, and the I foot is the zipper foot. You get an additional spool pin for if you want to use a twin needle, and then you do also get a twin needle with the machine, as well as a selection of standard machine needles. We get 3 different size spool caps for putting on the end of your threads to stop them coming flying off the machine when you're sewing. You get a thread net, and you can use this to put over the threads if it's a slippy thread and it's unravelling. A little cleaning brush, 2 screwdrivers, a disc screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver for changing your needles and removing the presser foot holder if necessary. Comes with a soft dust cover to keep the machine clean whilst not in use, and then you also get the foot controller, which, as I've already said, is optional because you may want to use the start stop button instead. And then the manual that comes with the machine, it's all in English and there's loads of information in there with pictures as well as instructions on general use of the machine and how to use all the stitches that are on the machine. You've also got some troubleshooting information in there as well.
The mains lead is separate?
It is, so the mains lead comes separately there. And on the side of the machine here, if I turn this round so Keith can see, you have got the mains lead that plugs in here, your on-off switch is here, and the foot controller would plug in separately at the side there. And then that's the balance wheel on the edge of the machine. Let's see the A16 in action. So I am going to start off by showing you a straight stitch with the needle position in the left. So I'm going to turn the jog dial until I'm on stitch number 1. It tells me to use the J foot for this, which I've got on the machine here. And just slide my fabric underneath the foot, bring the presser foot lever down on the inside here to lower the foot onto my fabric and secure it in place. I'm going to bring the speed control right down to the slowest point, and then all I'm going to do is press the start button and it will start sewing. So you can see how slow that is, so I can have so much control over my stitching. But I can increase that if I want whilst I'm using it. And you just set this speed at a speed that's comfortable, with you and suits whatever you're working on. And press stop when we get to the end. And then once I'm at the end of my stitching, I can press the reverse button down and hold it and it will go backwards. press the needle up, needle down button, and raise the foot, use the cutter on the side to cut my threads. I've got a lovely neat stitch there. Now we've also got an automatic reverse button on this machine. So if we come over to the screen here and I press this button, the automatic reverse symbol will show up on the screen. So now when I come to start sewing and press the start button, slowly at the beginning it will do 3 stitches forward, 3 back, and then start going at the speed I've got it set at. And then press the stop button, and once you're at your finish point, you then press the reverse button once and it will do 3 stitches back and 3 stitches forward. Cut the thread on the side, and at the beginning and the end of my stitching now I have a really neat reverse stitch or lock stitch to hold the thread in place, and that means that that's not going to come undone. Now also on this machine we have a stretch stitch if you're working with stretchy fabrics, a zigzag stitch, and then you've got 2 different versions of the overcasting. We'll have a look at how number 6 works in a moment, but number 5 is if you're working on stretch fabrics. You have 2 versions of the blind hemming, and number 7 is for woven fabrics, non-stretch fabrics, and number 8 would be for stretchy fabrics. You've got a 3-step zigzag, which you may use for attaching elastic onto items, onto stretchy items. Number 10 is a triple straight stitch, and what that will do, it doesn't actually sew 3 rows of stitches side by side, but what it will do is come forward, backs, forward, and forward, back, forward. So it's creating a chunky stitch that's really strong. Number 11 and 12 are decorative stitches. 11 is a blanket stitch, and 12 is a herringbone stitch. Number 13 is a darning stitch, and numbers 14, 15 and 16 are all different versions of 1-step buttonholes. So let's have a look at stitch number 6, which is an overcasting stitch. It tells us to use the G foot. So I'll just get my little accessory pouch out of here and have a route around for the G foot. Release the J foot and clip the G foot in its place. And what we're going to do is you use the overcasting stitch along the edges of your fabric to stop it from fraying. So you're going to butt the edge of your fabric up against the inner edge of the foot here. And then where you've got this bar at the back, the stitch is actually going to stitch over that bar as a zigzag to create the overcasting stitch. So I'll bring the speed right down and press the start button. It's going to do 3 stitches on the spot because I've got the automatic lock stitch turned on. And what it's doing is forming a stitch as well as an overcast at the same time. I'll speed this up and we'll get down to the end. Raise the needle, cut the thread off on the side, and I've got my overcasting stitch with the seam included. So when you open that up, it's a nice neat seam, but the fabric is all encased in at the edge and it's going to stop it from fraying. So the machine has 2 different versions of the straight stitch, one with the needle position in the left, which is stitch number 1, and you can see now that the needle is in the left position on the foot. And then we've got a version of it with the needle position in the centre, which is stitch number 2. And we can see now that the needle has moved to the centre of the foot. Now the reason we have these two different needle positions for the straight stitch is because it could depend on what foot you're using and if you're using any of the allowances on the needle plate here that are engraved into it. The zigzag stitch has a default length of 1.4mm and a default width of 3.5mm, but we can easily adjust these using the plus and minus buttons here. So I can pop the foot down, press the start button to start sewing, and it'll do my little reverse at the beginning. But I can increase that width up to a really wide 7mm swing of the needle over here, and I can decrease the length to make a satin stitch and increase the length, and this can all be done while the machine is actually sewing. And I can bring the width back down again. So we've got one stitch there, but just by adjusting the stitch width and stitch length, you can see the different variations of the stitch for different uses. The triple stitch, or the reinforcement stitch, is stitch number 10. So it tells us to use the J foot here. And this is really good if we're going through multiple layers of fabric and we want a really strong stitch. So I'm just folding my fabric over there, so I've actually got 6 layers of the fabric. I'll pop the foot down, press the start button, and what it's doing, if I slow this down so you can see, is it's doing 1 forward, 1 back and forward, forward, back, forward, forward, back, forward, all on the same spot. So it's creating a really strong, secure stitch. And it's a good solid machine, which means that the needle penetrates the fabric really well. You can see it's a nice thick stitch, and that is really, really strong.
So that's saved you from having to go look for thick thread.
It has.
Use your existing
I've just
colour,
used a standard thread, yeah.
Yeah, and away you go. You've got a reinforced seam, great for bags, canvas.
Exactly,
jeans,
bag making jeans, denim,
yeah.
hemming your, the husband's jeans, anything like that, when they come to you with your jobs because you've got a new sewing machine. Perfect for that kind of thing, and bag handles especially, that need to be a nice strong stitch. And you can lengthen that stitch as well, or shorten it. The standard length is 2.5, but you can increase that if you want. The Brother A16 has 3 different styles of buttonholes: a standard rectangular buttonhole, a round-ended buttonhole, and a keyhole buttonhole, which you'd recognise from jackets and coats and outerwear. So we're going to have a look at the standard buttonhole, which is number 14. So I change my stitch to number 14, and it tells me to use the A foot. So this is the A foot, which is the buttonhole foot, and you might not be able to see it on the camera there, but it has got an A engraved in to the bottom of the foot there. And we've got a sliding guide at the back, and this is what we measure the size of our button in. So all we do is clamp your button in the end there, and then to attach the foot onto the machine, release the J foot, and the button will go through the back. So we're going to clip that in place. And the last thing we need to do to set up is bring this lever down. Just turn this around so you can see. Bring this lever down, and that goes behind this marker, but in front of the peg at the back. And that is what measures the size of the buttonhole. Now, the beauty of this machine is that if you don't pull this guide down and you try to do a buttonhole, on the screen here, it will tell you what you've not done. So the machine will never let you do anything that it doesn't want you to do. At the same time, if we move back to another stitch and this had been left down, it won't let you stitch until you push it back up again. So I'm going to do my buttonhole on my fabric here. So I want one end of the buttonhole to be here and the other end to be here. And the fabric is always going to come towards you when you do a buttonhole. That's one thing to remember. So normally when you're sewing, you're pushing the fabric away from you, but when you do the buttonhole, it's going to come towards you instead. I have been caught out many times and ended up stitching the buttonhole off the edge of my fabric. So I want the end of my buttonhole to be here, so I'm just using a little fabric chalk marker.
So that's the bottom of your buttonhole?
The bottom of the buttonhole, yeah, that's where I want that to be. Okay. And the rest of it, so the rest of the buttonhole is going to come up here.
Okay.
Okay. And we now mark that up inside here, and when I put the foot down, I want the end of the buttonhole to be in that hole there on the foot. And then we're all set up, so all I'm going to do is press the start button and it's going to stitch my buttonhole. So it's going to go down one side and back, doing a straight stitch, and then it will do a zigzag over it. And then when it gets to the end, it will automatically come back down the other side, do the bar tack across the bottom of my buttonhole, and then work with the zigzag back down the other side and do the bar tack at the other end. It automatically does a lock stitch to tie the buttonhole off and tie the thread off. Raise the needle, raise the foot, and it will automatically spring back down, ready to do another buttonhole. Cut the thread, and there we have our buttonhole. And now what you do is use your seam ripper that comes with the machine. And just pop that inside the bottom there. Watch your fingers on the back, you don't want to end up stabbing yourself with it. And slowly work your way down the middle of the buttonhole, right to the other end to open it up. And if I take the button out of the back of the foot there, you'll see that that buttonhole is exactly the right size for the button. The tension dial for the machine is here, and if you're using the same thread top and bottom, you should have absolutely no problems with the tension at all. The only time you may have to change it is if you were working with voiles or chiffon and you find it's puckering up the fabric a little bit. We might just need to release that a little bit just by bringing it down to 3. But you'll notice there you've got the lines between 3, 4 and 5, and what that means is that 4 is your average, and you should be absolutely fine keeping it at that. I think in all the years that I've owned a Brother machine, which is probably 12, 13 years now that I've had Brother machines, I have only twice had to change tension, on this style of machine. And one of them was because I was using a chiffon fabric, and the other one I was using 2 different weights of threads with a top stitch thread on the top and a standard underneath. The rest of the time in all the sewing I've done, all my different projects, it's been absolutely fine at number 4. And the last little reminder, if you are using a twin needle on this machine, so it comes with a twin needle, it attaches in the same way as a standard needle does, but please remember that you cannot use your needle threader with a twin needle, as you could end up damaging the hook of the needle threader. So you will need to thread them manually, And what you do have is a little spool pin here that plugs in to the top of the machine here. You've got a little hole for that. And we would have one thread on our standard spool pin and our additional second thread on our extra spool pin there. And both threads will both just be threaded up through the same system as you do normally. Another nifty feature I like to show people on this machine is, as well as being able to have the straight stitch needle position to the left and in the centre, you can also custom choose your needle position in 0.5 millimetre increments. So at the moment I am in the left position, which means that the position here, which was like the width position, but for a straight stitch it's the needle position, is at 0. And I can increase that, and as I increase it, we can just see the needle moving by 0.5 mil every time. Until we're all across at the other side at 7. So now when I bring the needle down, you can see it's on the right hand side of the foot instead. Now this is really handy if you want to, customise where you want your needle position to be. So it may be that you're working with something a little bit awkward and you've been moving your fabric around, you've finally got it on the machine and it's all prepped, but you've realised that your needle position is just not quite in the right place. So we can just adjust that slightly to be suitable for whatever it is we're working on.
And I think some of the additional feet you can buy for the machine as well. You may need your needle in a
exactly, yeah. Some of the other feet that you can get, such as the narrow zipper foot and the bi-level foot, which we did a video for as well. You can see with those how you would need to have the needle position in a different point rather than just being to the left or in the centre.
Hi brother sewing and embroidery machine owners, if you want to take a look at our helpful videos, just go to our YouTube channel and you can find us by going to YouTube, and in the search box you can type for Keith Lord Sewing. And just click on my channel here, and I would suggest that you visit the playlist, because all the videos that we've placed on the channel are organised so that you can find the things that you're looking for a little bit easier. If you're having some problems or issues with your machine, say your needle threader or tension or something, you could view the full playlist for problems, try this, and there you'll find some helpful guides.